I was sponsored for 3 years. I had my cadetship, but after graduating, I had a problem going on board as an officer. That was the period. Ngayon, ang problem natin is, ganun pa rin. So, meaning, does those problems have issues? What are the government doing? No? If you're gonna look at it, and has been discussed by our previous presenters, masyadong malawak ang maritime industry. Okay? And as the day goes by, it goes on and on and on. It grows. Just to share a bit on, for example, on our autonomous ships and all, magkakaroon pa daw ba tayo ng, for example, jobs in the future? I think, tama si sir. Seafarers will be there. Okay? But what you have to note is that the people doing work is actually not going anywhere. Nandyan tayo, population is going. What's happening is that nagbabago yung trabaho. Before, as I was discussing with some of your faculty at the back, wala namang electrotechnical officers. Now we have electrotechnical officers. Before we have radio operators, now we don't have any more radio operators. So meaning, in the globalization stage, there is always fear of autonomous shipping. But if you're gonna look in totality, as the day goes by, the maritime industry grows and grows. Sabi nga nila, later on you're gonna see in the presentation that it is, I cannot imagine, as for myself, that the maritime industry will stop. Because maritime industry is the lifeblood of any economy in the world. Unless your own economy, your own country, is self-sustaining. Which I don't think there is. So, for now, the majority of the sectors that we're dealing every year is number one, manpower. Dito nakafocus lagi si Philippines. We have been producing, and as I said, we are the most preferred seafarers, sabi nga ni sir kanina, in the whole world. We have ports, which is also a good revenue generation. We have lots of ports in the Philippines, especially we are an archipelagic country. Operations, katulad ng sinabi ni sir, ship superintendents or management companies are continue to increase. And shipyards. As discussed, we are the 4th largest or 5th largest shipbuilding nation. But what is evolving now, especially in maritime countries, is that maritime tourism. This continues now. And as part of the planning of the government later on, you will see that maritime tourism is a good opportunity for the country. So it becomes an increasing and an evolving focus of the government. Not only, for example, one of the most starking example is Boracay. Before, what we think of it's just tourism. For as long as we continue to get revenues, build hotels, get tourists on board and spend, for as long as we're okay na yan. But later on, the regulators realize, our government realize that if we do not take care of the maritime component in it, we lose the business in the long term. So, evolving components. Next, as I said, we're the single source of trained and certificated manpower on board the vessels. True enough, yung BIMCO report in 2000, I think that was 2015, we were overtaken by China for officers, but for ratings, we're still number one. Now, you have to take note that in that statistics, which I was part of the study, is that China included internal waterways. They've included in their statistics the officers for their own ships. Okay? And if you imagine China, if they have 1 billion population, and then, especially for those seafarers who've been into Yellow Sea, imagine nyo yung barko nila is parang trend sa atin. So if you compute all of those officers in those ships, basically you would really go for number one. But if you're looking for statistics for officers going on board international trade, then there is a bias in that study. So not to mention, the study did not include the officers on board our domestic shipping. So, on board our domestic shipping, there are 3,000 ships. Hindi siya sinama doon sa study niya. Okay? Next, we are ranked as 5th major shipbuilding. Tama si sir. we're producing ships. Not necessarily we own the shipbuilding. So, yun ang ating challenge. Okay? So, hard facts, we have active seafarers in 2017, 700,000. Okay, that includes seafarers, that includes other professionals going on board cruise ships. Okay, superintendents, and then even faculty continues to renew their certifications under the SCCW Convention. Up-to-date manning agencies. Ganun karami. Now, later on, I want you to start thinking of those questions. 400. Sabi ni student, a question for the students is that, ganun pala karami yung pwede namin puntahan. Kasi lang, nababasa ko lagi sa Facebook, wala kang backer, hindi ka, so ano yung question doon, di ba? If ganun naman pala karami yung mga manning agencies na, how is it possible that there is still difficulty for our graduates to get work, di ba? And then what does the government do to regulate those manning agencies? Meron bang correlation tayo? Or does the government need to do more? Or there's a reaction from the market? So I want you to think those questions. Next, BSP. Last year, there were hearsays or there were rumors, very noisy rumors that, we're losing Filipino seafarers all across the... Yeah, di ba? But then again, on paper, on bills, our actually remittances go up by 20%. Okay? Is this related or is this correlated dun sa threat na bumababa na daw yung decline? And if there's truth to it, what happened? Why did the remittances go up? Okay? So isa yun sa mga reflection natin. But hard fact says we have the remittances went to $5.8 billion. Okay? So, itong $5.8 billion, may impact ba to sa influence natin sa government to enact changes on the seafaring industry, on the maritime industry? How does this affect our influence to the government to focus on the improvement of the maritime industry? So, yun yung mga questions. Next. Tonnage use. Okay. All of the vessels in our country pay tax. Okay? Once they register to Marina, they pay tax, and the total of the taxes that were collected from our ships only is around 300 million. So of course, those taxes are being remitted to our government. Internally, yan pala yung nagigain ng government because of those ships registered in us. Now, next question. So ganun pala karami yung ships natin. But you would also realize, and I think everyone would agree that, yung issues natin with domestic shipping. So, sabi nila, maraming barko na under tonnage. Diba? Maraming barko na hindi pwedeng masakyan ng kadete. Diba? Kasi, hindi siya more than 500 gross tonnage. Diba? So, imagine, if, talking about the fiscal policy of the government, if those ships were actually being gauged in the right manner, siguro, in 2017, we would have more. Diba? But that questions leave to be answered. Next, for our schools. So, just of last year, this is correct me if I'm wrong in this data. So, this was made and this is in the official website of JET. Now, there are 56 TVL. Okay? And then there are 64 MEGIs. And then there were 133 MTIs. Now the question is, there's always a question of moratorium and then opening the schools and then konti pa ba yung schools? Or tama na yung number of schools? Yung number ba of institutions natin for the maritime training institution is enough? So is it the reason why our government is doing a moratorium? Do we think, is it a more fiscally sound or is it more a wise decision para sabihin natin na, kailangan ng schools lang, ganito lang ang dapat ng students nila. How about those students who wanted to study more at Maritime? Parang ganun. So, yun. Next, on our ships. So, number of shipyards natin, 292. Wow, dami. So, kaya siguro naging fifth. But of the 292, only few of them, may mga classification yan. Okay? So, the total number of constructed ships is 1,000 ships. Okay? And the estimated number of employees, 45,000. So, nung sinabi ni Dr. Dalaguete kanina, we're focusing so much on maritime education training, on seafaring. But we have not yet focused on other fields where we are. So, for example, but look at our shipbuilding. As of today, we are employing already 45,000 seafarers, 45,000 Filipinos on board on those shipbuilding industries. Pero kung meron ba na tayong, how shall I say that? Meron na ba tayong government sanction programs for us to improve the skills? I think I would agree kay Sir kanina. I think there's not much government light on that. But if kung meron man, siguro blessing lang. I think, but because most of the skills program are developed by the shipbuilding industries themselves. In fact, I came across with one major shipbuilding. Even though you are a graduate of TESDA for the welding course, you still need to undergo yung welding course nila. Meaning, does that mean that the standards being employed by the TESDA or by the government of welding is different or at par with that shipbuilding? Why do we need to have two standards? Diba? Why not simply, for seafarers, we follow single standard all across the world. Why not, para hindi maging redundant yung skills training, why not adopt the same standard? So those are some of the things that you can think of. Now, big major shipbuilding in the country, siguro ito yung isa sa mga nag-bombard ng gross tonnage figures. We have the one in Keppel Shipyard, Subic, Hanjin. We have the Herma Shipping in Bataan, Keppel. In Cebu, we have Chunishi and Phil Iron in Cagayan de Oro. Now, if you're gonna look at it, by the name itself, you know that they are not organic in nature. Chunishi is Japanese. Hanjin, Keppel. These are non-organic Filipino, but these are the ones that make ships that are going to the headlines. Example, yung Hanjin, di ba? You've heard of, di ba? Yung mga big container ships na nilabas ng Hanjin. But, sabi nga, as to organically, these are not actually Filipino shipbuilding industries. So, yeah. Sabi natin kanina, yung shipbuilding, di ba kanina 292, sir, saan din nakikita? Ba't wala kami naririnig? So, if you're gonna take a look at this, there are 84 in Visayas, 129 in Luzon. So, meaning may small scale, may medium scale, and the ones that we're hearing of is large scale. Now, mind you that when I say shipbuilding, ship repair industries, this involves the ships being repaired on those platforms. This involves them yung undergoing their maintenance and then regular visits to the shipbuilding facilities. So yeah, if you want the statistics, I'll give you more. We can go forward. Okay, sa ships, no? Our registered domestic fleet actually is 14,000. Imagine the number of vessels that we have. Now, imagine how many of those can only be boarded by the cadets. Statistically, there are 100,000 maritime students enrolling in the first year. Those 100,000, as the years go by, statistically in the past 5 years, only 20,000 of which graduates for 3 years. Now, of that 20,000, only 6,000 or to 7,000 graduates to BS degree, meaning 30% goes on board the vessel. Now, if you're gonna ask, starting figures, kung sa domestic pa lang, we have that much of vessels, makes you ask. I'm not saying that these are all pwede, ah. I'm saying that we have the ships and you only need a portion of that. And mind you, if you're gonna look at the statistics, those 7,000, majority of which are not delivered on international shipping. So we may need to have some mechanism to, if you really want to go through this storm for the cadets, we may need to have a mechanism to use our domestic resources. We have 2,000 domestic operators. Political economy. So what's the effect of the maritime industry? Basically, ang influence ng maritime industry sa government natin in politics. Actually, when you say talk about politics is in the governance is that ang pinaka-related natin is yung build project of the current administration. The build project requires you to have resources, machinery, of course, yung all of the machineries that needs to be shipped, not only internally in our internal waters, but from China, most of the shipment going to the Philippines. You need the local products, for example, cement. Before we have our own cement plants in the Philippines, but we are actually importing, because of the build project, we are actually importing more cement for us to cope up with the building requirements of the government. So, ano namang effect nun, sir? So, if we have the maritime industry, we have now our government, what is now the effect of the maritime industry? Basically, okay, so basically, in two days back, I think 3 days back, the Secretary of Finance, Secretary Dominguez, quote and I quote, "The sustained growth of the Philippines demands that the government spend aggressively for key infrastructure projects that will remove choke points, preventing the country from operating at optimum capacity." Meaning, kailangan daw natin mag-spend. The government needs to spend. Okay? Para magkaroon ng trabaho, para magkaroon ng negosyo. Unfortunately, the problem is that our economy has choke points. For our industry, ang choke points natin is we have less ports. We have less efficient ships. Okay? And we have less, shall I say, not so much interested seafarers joining our local shipping. Okay? Some ports, we are 7,000 islands, and our ports are not ready for such volume. If you gotta look at our Manila ports, laging congested. Our ports are not ready for such volume. Our ships, unfortunately, are not efficient enough. Kaya mahal yung shipment is that we don't have efficient ships transporting goods. Sa merchants, ang ugali ng merchants natin dito is that, which correlates with nag-ship is that, our merchants don't go for the bulk. Okay, ibig sabihin, if there's a product from, sabi nila, di ba, mas mura yung produkto na galing China kaysa yung produkto na galing Davao. Bakit? It's not a tariff. When Chinese imports container, when the merchants, for example, in Davao, transport it to Manila, break bulk. So pagpalagay natin parehas na 5 piso nag-umpisa. Unfortunately, the ship owners are not assured that from Davao to Manila, puno yung barko. So what they do, they charge higher cost. So anong nangyayari doon sa produkto na galing din sa Davao, na dapat mas malapit sana, nagmamahal siya. Okay? So, ang sabi ng ating Finance Secretary, for us to really optimize our economy, kailangan i-resolve ng government yung infrastructures. So that involves ports, that involves our ships, and also, ano naman kinalaman ng ating seafarers? Well, our seafarers are designed to go on board international ships, right? Cadets, who wants to go on board international ships? Maersk Line, yan. Abu Jem, wants to go there? Yeah, taas kamay. Okay, who wants to serve domestic ships? Really? Okay. Well, you will not be penalized for that. The answer there is, it's a simple result of market. Because when you go international ships, you get paid higher. And then, actually tama rin si Sir. Yung trend doon, tama si Sir. I-highlight ko lang ulit si Sir. When you go out there, don't so much dwell on cost. Don't so much dwell on the salary. Paano ba sasabihin niya, Sir? Although, mahirap eh. Okay, when you go for interview, you answer all of the questions competently. Okay, after the interview, when you're hired, that's the time you ask for the salary. Shall I say? Because do not do the mistakes of other seafarers that before they sat down on the table, the first thing they ask, how much is the salary? Okay, may tip na sa inyo sila, sir. May tip na kami. Because managers won't hire you for that. Okay? The thing is, I don't know. I don't have the starting answer kasi maybe you're gonna ask me, oh, si sir, speaker for the day, coming from, sometimes you go to IMO and all, he has the silver bullet. No. Even the president doesn't have silver bullet. So when you ask the president and you walk to the president, no, nobody has a silver bullet. But the government needs to do something. We have to do something. The institution, and I am happy that AIMS is doing something because these simple things, yung forum, already opens the mind of the students on what's happening in the global trend. And sometimes kasi, if you don't have these mechanisms, ma'am, thank you very much, this is very good. If you don't have this mechanism, you're gonna go out of the institution. Malalaman nyo na yan later on. Ang hirap. But now you have the chance. Okay? Segue ako, sorry. Okay, so, again, I have discussed build project of the government, transport workers, that's us. That's include the ports, okay? Ocean platforms. Ito, although it's not yet that very, ano ba sabi natin? It's politicized because yung mga ocean platforms natin sa west coast of the Philippines is that may mga survey, but it's not fully built in. And the answer to that is because of politics. Okay? And then mobilization of equipment, I told you that. Kailangan kasi para magkaroon ng proyekto, kailangan din na makinarya. Kailangan ng mga mas malalaking barko para ilipat. And then lastly, the materials. I told that. Okay, so the impact of the maritime industry in the government is that it gives revenue. It gives jobs, ancillary services, it gives employment. And then lastly for us, it gives the liquidity to our country. Whether we like it or not. Okay? May sarcasm or not, big or not, overseas Filipino workers, including seafarers, plays a vital and important role in the Philippine economy, especially now. Okay? Tumataas yung dollar, di ba? Tumataas yung dollar, bakit? Simple explanation, sabi natin sa balita, it's not rocket science kasi mas marami daw yung binibili natin kaysa binibenta natin. Now, who's helping us? If our industries are not yet having the output, no, to buy in dollars, ang gumagawa para sa atin, ang nag-contribute, one of the major contributors is our seafarers. Primary, of that, nag-increase siya ng 20%. Okay. So, later on, I'll be asking your questions, and then, but that's the start. I sent you the hard facts. Then later on, we can discuss more because I think I think discussion is the platform for what's the actual effect of the maritime industry in our political economy. Thank you.